and welcome you. Welcome to our second interaction with Alter Live. It's good to have Stephanie and Andy with us tonight to share what they're doing, what they have to offer as a platform, and answer all those good questions. So without further ado, Stephanie.
Yeah, well, it's nice to be with all of you. I'm Stephanie Antonucci-Leith. As Cindy said, my colleague Andy Mann is on this call as well. Andy can wave so you know which one he is. But we both work with Alter Live. We've spent the last 6 months of this pandemic exploring the question of hybrid ministry and digital worship and what this is going to look like for the present and the future coming. So yeah, and you can feel free to unmute yourselves or put it in the chat as well. I would love to make this as helpful for you as possible. Today, we are going to talk kind of at a high level of what we're seeing as trends across the world of online and hybrid ministry. I'm going to kind of give you a state of the union, state of the church address of where we see things right now. And then some, thoughts for the future. And then specifically, as we get into the Alter Live platform, I'll talk specifically to that, but then also generally as we think about hybrid ministry strategies. I didn't cover that as much in the last time. And I know, Cindy, you kind of prompted some of those questions. So, so if you wouldn't mind just into the chat or unmuting yourself, anything specifically that you're coming to the table today wanting to know, is there anything from anyone that you'd like to make sure we cover? That's an open question.
Well, I'm familiar with the platform. I know in a lot of the things that we're attempting to do through Zoom and Facebook and other things like that, and those can be somewhat clunky. So just really looking to see what the product offers, and if it's more of a meeting platform or if it's more of a service-oriented platform, or exactly what the goal is for the software.
It's a great question. Yep, we can definitely get into that.
Okay.
Great.
My interest would be basically just first of all, I'm totally unfamiliar with it, so I want to learn about it. The other thing is that I'm surrounded by people who are technically challenged. And so how I want to see how easy it is, especially as we move out of, right now we have a very core team who are doing this, and we're burning ourselves out. And so I'm looking for, if we're going to continue to do this in the future, how technically competent do the people have to be, and how can we make it easy for more people to be involved?
Yes, great question. We can definitely talk about that as well. Super. So, and yes, Denise.
Sorry. I hadn't heard about you guys until today. So I'm new on the bandwagon. So, and the piece that intrigues me is the piece about the community building within a congregation, not just doing the Facebook and the Zoom stuff, but how this really can be sold to our congregations as the tool for, you're going to want to do this from now on, and this is what church is going to look like. So I'm looking forward to learning more about that.
Awesome. Okay, great. So great, you guys just covered the trifecta: the how, the why, and the what. We will definitely cover all of those. Great. All right, well, and feel free, we are a smaller group, so feel free to pause, raise your hand, send questions in the chat. We can have this as a bit more conversational. So I'm going to go ahead and share my screen here. All right, can you all see this? Super. All right, so like I said, my name is Stephanie. I live in Massachusetts now. I was born and raised actually in Afghanistan and Pakistan. My family did humanitarian work there for my entire childhood. So I moved to the States at 18 to start at Gordon College, which some of you might be familiar with. It's a small Christian college just north of Boston here. My family followed me. They missed me so much they followed me here. And I've lived in this area ever since then. I went to my undergrad for psychology. I stumbled and was kind of tricked into the world of entrepreneurship That's a different story, but found myself in this world of redemptive entrepreneurship specifically, a place where I could really see a lot of skills coming together. So I spent the last 4 years teaching and running our Center for Entrepreneur Leadership at Gordon, where I helped undergrad students and graduate students develop business plans. I did consulting for nonprofit and business, and part of the process caught the bug for a way of seeing the world as filled with problems that can be seen as opportunities. So you can imagine when COVID hit, talk about a big problem that can be seen as an opportunity. So back in April, I got to talking with 2 other guys that I met through my previous role at the college. They are both software engineers, had run their own mobile app agency for a long time. We just began speculating, wondering, what is this disruption like for churches? Churches are not known to be early tech adopters, and they have, and their type of community is a unique type that people do not usually design for. So we really began as what all good entrepreneurs do, which is to start asking questions, really market research. So we began interviewing pastors, priests, lay people, asking them, what is this experience like for you? What's working? What's not working? And the number one thing we started to hear out of that was that live stream exists. It has existed. Video conference exists, things like Zoom that we're on right now. But the problem was that people were feeling like these platforms drove engagement in a specific way. A one-way broadcast is not the same thing as a two-way relationship. And as some of you have said too, what has really been missing, and I think a lot of us have felt in the last 8 months, is this desire for community online. Not just a place where we can watch church, but we can be church. So back in May, June, we started writing our first lines of code to start trying to address this issue. So our team has been working, there's about 20 of us. Andy Mann, who's on this call, joined our team in about the mid-July. His background is in marketing, worked at HubSpot, as many of you in the New England area know. HubSpot. So we have a team of 20 of developers, and then people like Andy and I who are not software engineers working on this together. We've designed everything that we've built and are going to show you today with church partners. We are very intentional about only building features that churches have really built alongside us to make sure that we are building things that are actually going to be useful in the context of a church community. So the platform that you're going to see today launched on Saturday. So we are fresh out the gate, hot off the press, so to say, and developing rapidly. We actually began with a different product a few months ago. We've made some pivots along the way because we're just like you guys are learning this space. We're learning what it means to do church online. So we have developed and grown alongside churches in that way. So I want to start, before I actually talk about, we get into logistics, I want to give you a state of the union of the church, so to say. Some good news, some bad news, and some opportunities that we see coming our way. So first, I want to tell you the bad news. The bad news is, as you've all probably seen trending, if you follow Barna at all, or even from your personal experience, you see that church attendance is not the same as it was pre-COVID. Barna reports that 1 in 5 churches could close in the next 18 months. Granted, that's not just necessarily because of COVID, but potentially because of underlying causes as well pre-COVID that have been amplified. 36%, when churches do reopen, they're only seeing 36% of in-person attendance. Granted, some of that is restrictions, but even when churches have reopened their doors, they're not necessarily seeing this clamoring to come back in the building as pre-COVID days. The scariest statistic is this one, that 40% of churchgoers are dropping out, meaning church adults who have attended church prior to the pandemic are not attending church regularly in the last 6 to 8 months. We're going to dig into that number a little bit, but at face value, it feels a little alarming. The good news, and there is good news, is that just like all of us in all other parts of our lives, we've learned a level of resilience, and we've also learned how to turn this challenge into an opportunity. As faith communities, people are reporting that 60% of churchgoers want to actually continue with online after this pandemic ends. that there has been, I think I said this in the last workshop too, an assumption that I had coming into COVID and into this pandemic was there's no way that real authentic community can happen online. That's the kind of thing that only happens in person. And I think what the challenge to that assumption has been that people actually do feel like they can connect with people and that they can grow spiritually in online spaces. A further proof of that is 63% actually want to use online to deepen spiritual life beyond this season. And 35% of people report they will prefer a combination of both in-person and online in the season coming. If some of these that I don't have on screen, but drilling into those stats more, there is millennials, of which I'm of that generation, actually prefer 50-50 on whether they want to do inline or in person. So they're starting to be growing, certain pockets of your church attendance has different preference and digital openness to some of these platforms. The opportunity. So as we look at those, the bad news and the good news, we can look at stats all day long. The reality is they are projected, there's a current state right now and things could change as we go forward. But I think the church has an opportunity in this time to take some of the amazing lessons we've learned and apply them into the future way that we actually do community together. So I'd like to tell you the story of Rose. Rose is an attendee at a church in South Carolina that we work with. She has been in a nursing home for quite a few years prior to COVID. And so her attendance was only as much as she could get a ride to church. Once COVID hit, she was, obviously not able to leave her nursing home. Her church quickly moved online and started using Zoom. And Rose would call in and be able to access the church service online. A friend of hers, who was actually also in the same nursing home, just a few doors down, would call into the same service. And in the middle of the pandemic, when it was really heightening and everyone in nursing homes were quarantined to their rooms, Rose and her friend would actually call into the service early to talk with each other because that was the only way that they could really have a good conversation. And slowly but surely, other church members would also start to listen into this conversation. They would log in early just to hear these two old ladies share stories about their life, their grandchildren, and things like that, because they never got to see these ladies anymore. And after a few weeks of doing this, Rose told her pastor, "I no longer feel like a second-class citizen just because I can't attend in person." And the pastor told us when he conveyed this story to us, he said, it was a wake-up call for me to realize all this time, I didn't realize who was actually getting left out of in person and for whom doors had actually opened because we have now been able to be flexible in the way that we experience community together. And so with that, his church has really embraced this model and is charging forward with it. And we call this model hybrid ministry. It's a new way to do community together, a way in which people online aren't just viewers, but they're full participants. The way that we actually design and think about our church services, our events, and our resources is designed assuming that people online isn't just like putting up a poster somewhere for people to watch passively, but that we are actually engaging them like they are full members of our community. So, we've seen a huge, lots of stories as we've dug into this, Andy and I, in all the churches that we talked to, and we've started compiling a short list of the people that we think actually really like attending online. These are often people we might not actually think of in our day-to-day. I certainly, when the pandemic happened and my church went online, I remember thinking mostly about myself and whether that was the way I wanted to worship or not. Not thinking as much about all the other people who actually might benefit from this. So we have the shut-ins, like I just told you, people who are immune compromised, the unchurched spouse and family members. There's a great story that we often share out of a church we work with in the UK that their community, they have a woman in their community who's been going to church for 40 years. Her husband has never attended with her. And during the pandemic, she started recording herself reading scripture. After a while of watching her struggle, putting the iPhone up to get the recording right, her husband said, "You know what, just give me the iPhone. I'm going to hold it while you record yourself." And then after a few times of that, he said, "You know what, give me the Bible. I'm going to read the scripture now." And then after that, he's like, I want to see myself read this scripture in this thing that you produced. And so he started watching the service. And before you know it, he became one of the tech people that was assisting with, kind of compiling these things and working together. So this man who had never attended church in 40 years suddenly found himself an active part of this community simply because he could do it from his comfort of his couch. So it's stories like this that we feel really encouraged by. You have other groups like parents of high maintenance children, travelers working or on vacation, snowbirds, seekers who are not ready for an in-person experience. I've often started thinking, how scary is it to wonder what happens behind the closed doors of a church if you've never been inside a church? And now online actually gives you visibility into what are those people doing together. You can watch at a distance, and when you're ready to engage, the people, and you can choose to take that next step. And then last but not least, introverts. So this is 40% of our community, report that they are an introvert. We often, overlook the ways that they do want to engage. But from a recent workshop that we did, these were all the comments that we had about introverts. One of my favorite was, I disagree that introverts can't be good online engagers. Most of us are much better engaging people from our couches on a computer than we are in person. Andy actually has a great story. Actually, Andy, you might want to share that story.
Sure. In my church, when we went online, there was one particular woman who, she's middle-aged, and she is a single mother of 3 children, lifetime Christian follower of Jesus. And she is an introvert, and going to coffee hour is not a fun thing for her. It's a little high stress. It's just kind of draining. She's not shy. And when we all went online, we were using YouTube at the time. She was a very chatty person over in the chat pane. And I actually asked her, I was like, so for an introvert, you're kind of vocal. And she said, oh, from my room, it's very easy to be social, right? And that's a nice story in and of itself. Later, a couple months into the pandemic, there was an opening on our elder board, and she had become quite popular now at the church because her gifts had been visible and being realized. And so now she is a member of our she's one of our board of elders. So not that the pandemic did it, but being on, everyone online allowed her gifts. Her gifts were really sort of under a bushel. Her light was under a bushel for a long time. And so online was just a great way for that to be unshackled.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. Yeah, so it's, there's a slew of people, and I'm sure you've seen it in your own communities as well. For those of us who it's been really hard for, there's also been people for whom this has really opened doors. So now we get into this interesting complex thing. Andy and I have been studying the space of online church for the last 6 months. And one of the most interesting things that we've seen come out of recent Barna studies and that we've seen across churches, the first in March, April, you guys started running a sprint, and that sprint was, how do we get online as fast as possible to Easter? And then from Easter until maybe August or September, it was, okay, now what do we do with this online thing that we're doing? And we're not sure how long it's going to last, and we're trying to keep it afloat. And then since September, now it's this thought of, okay, how, are we going back in person? And if we do go back in person, how has our attendance actually changed? We've seen this interesting trend happen. This number, remember, 40% of churchgoers are dropping or self-reportedly dropping out. They have not attended church. We're not seeing them in our virtual pews. When asked in the past month, have you watched church online? They would say yes. But when also asked in the past month, have you attended church in person or online? They self-reported no. This is a really interesting stat because it says, 40% of people that are reporting that they are not attending church are actually watching church, but they don't feel like they are actually participating in church. So even though our services get online, it doesn't necessarily mean that people feel like they are participating. So Andy and I look at stats like this and we think there's something wrong with the way that we're defining engagement. So and for us, as coming from the technology side, we see the core problem coming from the reality of the tools that we use. There's amazing tools, but the reality is most social media has been designed for engagement in these terms. likes, views, sharing the video, comments. So when you have analytics to measure or ways to measure it, this is what you're measuring against. The reality is, in the church world, church engagement looks like this. See who is here, see who is not here. Your absence is known as well as your presence. You can pass the peace. You can talk with people individually. You can digest a sermon, not just, swallow it whole, but chew on it with other people through, discussion questions or times of self-reflection and meditation. Coffee and social hour, the 15 minutes before and after a sermon, are some of the most important, because that's where people really get to go deeper with one another. And lastly, the ability to pray together in small groups, in one-on-ones, to have real time of ministering to one another in that way more organically. So Altar Live was really built out of looking at these two lists of online engagement versus church engagement and saying, could we build a platform that really is built around this church engagement piece? So I'm going to show you but rather than tell, I'm going to show. It's way more fun. So I'm going to show you a high-level overview of what Altar Live does, the platform at broad, and then after that, we're going to dive into some more logistics. First, at the high level of thinking about your strategy for online ministry for the long haul, and then specifically how Altar Live might fit into that. And we can start getting into more questions then.
So you started live streaming your church services online. You adapted your preaching, you figured out the music, and your numbers grew. But some people have been dropping out of church. As many as 40% of churchgoers say they have not been to church online or in person more than 2 or 3 times since the pandemic began. Something got lost in the transition. Something is missing. Your people, your community, your small groups, they can see you, but they can't see each other. People don't want Netflix for church. They want community. What if you could combine the best of what your live stream does for your content with the best of what video conferencing does to connect your community? Welcome to Altar Live. Altar Live is an online platform designed for faith communities to host interactive and engaging events and services. Our simple, intuitive platform gathers your people together online where they see each other during a church service and mingle and socialize with each other. When you share your church's live stream in Altar Live, it's a whole different experience. Attendees choose where to sit and have a watch party with a friend or two. Or they sit quietly by themselves and just see from a distance who else is attending church online today. During the passing of the peace, find a friend and connect with them for an almost in-person experience. Do you miss coffee hour after church? In Altar Live, see who's around and just grab a table and talk face-to-face with a friend or acquaintance for a while. When church is over, newcomers easily find the welcome table where they can talk with someone from the welcome team, ask questions, and learn about next steps. Does your church have a place where someone can ask for prayer or talk with someone in private? With Altar Live, you have that online. Just save a table for prayer, and 2 or more can gather. Altar Live is easy to set up. A volunteer or tech team staff does it in 3 simple steps. First, create an event. Second, connect to your live stream feed. Next, copy and paste the link to your website or send it out. That's it. Church members and visitors tap or click on the link and join the event. No downloads or plugins required. Experience it for yourself right now. Just head to altarlive.com and start your free account today. Altar Live. Make church engaging again.
Awesome. That's the soothing voice of Andy. Let me put this back into present mode. So we will get back into the product later, and we'll dive down more into the nitty gritty of what it looks like, how it works, things like that, and we can dive into that. So I want to start at the high level of just what does it mean to get started, both with Altar Live, but more largely as you think about your hybrid ministry and online ministry going forward into this next season and beyond. So number one, we're going to talk through identifying your audience, identifying your team, investing in technology, and just trying. This is an ever-growing field. So step number one, the biggest thing that we advise churches to do is don't be alone in strategizing how you want your online community to be. Every church is different. And as one of the churches that we've worked with in Arlington, Mass has said as well, there's this 80-20 rule that has existed even before COVID happened, where 20% of the congregation does all the planning and really the heavy lifting for the other 80% of the congregation. And that is certainly true, if not less so. Maybe it's more like all the tech guys on this call are probably like, yep, there's the 5% of us that are doing the heavy lifting for the other 95% of us. But so it's not that this is a new problem, but one in which we're applying the same kind of principles to learning how to actually take things from being a more structured, centralized control to really actually empowering your own congregation to be a part of what you choose to do online. The beauty of things like having online ministry now is that each person can actually have a role because they have a computer or a device that they can take active part in and have some part in what it means to have online ministry. So first up, I would say is really talking with your existing members. Who are they? What do they want out of the platform and ways of connecting? Secondly, friends and family of existing members. It's an interesting stat out of the Unstuck group, which they do a lot of church consulting, is that it takes 80 members to bring in one new member to church. That there's that it essentially takes a village to raise a Christian is one way to say it. That it's really a group effort to be able to do that. So friends and families of existing members are probably the most likely people that you've started to see join remotely from other places. So what would it be like to continue engaging them? How do you build your church around what they want as well? And lastly, this group that we call the observers. Who's watching that might not even be known to you, who's a new person still. The beauty of things that like online is that people can see you who don't ever have to walk into your church building. Somebody can share a link that shares a link that shares a link, and you never know where it's going to end up. Another way to break these down in a different illustration is this. You have your, as you're also thinking about platforms, and Altar Live certainly fits in the middle of this, but as you think about other tools that you might use as well, you have your online congregation that is meeting synchronously. You have your offline congregation that might be watching on their own time. And then you have this third group of curious observers, like I just mentioned, that are watching from a distance. And so a good online strategy going forward is really thinking about each of these groups and what does it mean to cater around each of them. So again, this can be a shared, instead of being a shared an individual burden, it can be a shared load and a shared mission together. So as we think about people that it takes to not just, if you use a platform like Altar Live in your community, but any other kind of, ministry or platforms together, these are kind of 4 hats that we often identify as saying are really important to think about if you're going to be successful in that strategy. So, and they might be shared between people, as most church people wear lots of hats. So number 1, live stream coordinator. So this is somebody who's going to schedule, create, and manage the live stream. For Altar Live specifically, this is somebody who's going to actually, is going to learn the ins and outs of the back end of the system well, and manage that. For web and social media coordinator, this is your person who's going to be really intentional about getting the link out there. Half the battle is getting online. The other half of the battle is letting people know you're online. And so, who's going to take ownership of making sure it's on your website that, you do not have to have a complex social media, you can just have a Facebook page, or how can you make sure that people are getting the links and they know where to go? Thirdly, we've seen this new role start to emerge in churches, the tech deacon. It's a great title because just like deacons in the rest of church ministry, the tech deacon, this might be somebody in your congregation who maybe they learned the hard way. They are not somebody who's naturally tech savvy, but they are somebody who's learned the hard way and wants to make it easier so other people don't have to learn the hard way. Or maybe it's somebody who is naturally gifted in this area. But we often see this person as being the one who's actually thinking about the end to end, not just when that person clicks the link, but how do you help people get online, working one-on-one with people to get set up, and then thinking more broadly about what does engagement mean, keeping the pulse on that so that you are really hearing feedback and thinking about the experience that you're creating. And then lastly, you have your greeting team. This is often the hospitality team that takes, that stands by the door, or welcomes people, or runs coffee hour. Translate these people's roles online as well. There's an altar specifically, there's a lot of opportunity to help people feel welcome, help people feel included. And because we can do more of those engagement analytics on first-time visitors, returning visitors, who's here but hasn't connected with anyone in a while, you can really have that greeting team take more of a role in helping people feel like they're really connected in that online space. So thirdly, investing in technology and equipment. So before I get into this, Cindy has a poll that we used the last time. I would just like to know at a high level what you guys are using in your churches right now. And I heard a little bit ahead of time, but are you using Zoom, Facebook Live, YouTube Live, in-house system, other, and you could be using multiple ones of these as well. And by in-house system, we mean you're using some kind of video editing software like OBS, Wirecast, something like that. So you can go ahead and vote. A lot of Zoom, yep. Other things too, great, awesome. So, Zoom is an amazing platform for doing this video conferencing. And I'm sure some of you use it completely for your Sunday service. Some of you use it maybe for your small groups, and you stream you stream to Facebook or YouTube your service, and then you use Zoom for your after service coffee or Bible studies or things like that. So Alter really brings together, and we'll get into this, it brings together both of those onto the same platform. So it creates a seamless experience between what you would experience as a video live player like YouTube or Facebook with your coffee hour afterwards without having to go between platforms. It also sits on top of whatever you're already using. We can get into more details if you don't have a developed system already, but we can sit on top of as simple of things as Zoom to as complex of things as OBS, Wirecast, things like that you might be using to do video editing. All right, so investing in technology and equipment. Internet, hardware, software. These are kind of the three categories that most churches go through in their checklist. A lot of you have probably done this already. But as you think about going back into your buildings, this is often the first thing that you start reconsidering as you move back. What's the internet like in your building? Is it going to be fast enough? Do you have cameras and microphones that are going to be able to work? The beauty is things like iPhones and even Android phones have really great cameras. So you can start as simple as you want and grow from there. And then software, how do you actually want, what's the level of production you're looking for? The Venn diagram I didn't actually include on this screen is one I've often seen of accessibility, aesthetic, and authenticity. And, there's no one way to do church online. It's very hard to find one in the middle that's both incredibly produced and feels totally accessible and it feels very authentic to the way that your church does community. So it's okay if you choose 2 out of those 3. If you decide your church is not going to be one that's going to try to go for the gold on production, but you want to prioritize accessibility and authenticity, platforms like Zoom are great for that, where you can continue having that interaction. And then as you want to scale, you can still take those kinds of platforms into bigger arenas. Alter kind of sits in the middle of all of those, trying to bring together the accessibility, authenticity, and aesthetic. So first, at a high level, one thing I will say about investing in technology. I love this quote. The rumor is that the internet is free. Just like everything else, though, a digital strategy does need investment. So as your church is thinking about the future, I think there's, the pandemic has certainly not been easy. I think one of the great things about investing in digital tools is that they can last much longer than just this season. And so we'll break down some of the one-time and ongoing costs that you might need to start thinking about or already thinking about. And then again, we can get into question and answer too. One of the great things too is most technology, you can start by small and build your way up. You don't have to jump in the deep end. You don't have to spend $10,000 on a live stream setup. You can grow with it. I thought this was an interesting comparison as we frame as a church. What is it, for many churches, it's the first time we've ever invested in technology seriously. We've invested in lots of other things. Families in our church already have software subscriptions. They do Netflix and Spotify, paying, maybe $30 a month as a family for those kinds of things. And as a church, we spend, coffee, name tags, other things like that we do when we're in person. We do spend money on those things. So in the online space now, we're, thinking about investing in the ability for people to really connect, just like we do invest well in person. All right, so I'm going to take you through two setups and how Altar Live fits into both. So we're going to start getting into the nitty gritty. So feel free to start asking your questions at this point about, specific setup. So if your church is using Zoom and you would like to use Altar Live. So at the high level, somebody asked me, Altar Live is both a video player and a video conference platform, meaning we host your video stream from somewhere that you're already streaming from. So you could be streaming directly from Zoom. We can take it from Zoom into Altar Live. You could already, if you're using video editing software, you might be streaming to Facebook Live, Vimeo, or YouTube. We basically take that video player, embed it in our site, and it plays on our site like a video player. So the only extra step that you need is to essentially enter that URL link. So if you're using Zoom, you can still use Zoom to capture video to run your service. You would essentially have all your presenters, anybody who has an active speaking part in the service, join the Zoom session, stream that to Facebook, Vimeo, or YouTube, and then we capture that into Altar Live. Your members then join on the Altar Live side of things, where they actually get to basically do everything they did on Zoom, but now they get to go an extra level deeper by creating watch parties together, breakout rooms, and things like that. Zoom, is you're using your own Zoom license. You just pair the Altar Live account on top of that. So then we get into, for those of you who are using live stream, you probably have set up something like this already. So as you're also thinking about going back into your buildings, there is you can continue using Zoom to basically do that if you want a really simple switching ability, or you can start to grow. Some of these things, they look complicated at first, but they can be kept simple. So things like, so what you would start with if you're looking to actually use a video editing software is starting with cameras and microphones. What do you need to basically capture video and audio in the space? And I can get through a list of those as well. Then you need some kind of video editing software that captures those feeds. And this is where you add slides, lower thirds, you switch between video feeds, you control audio levels and sources. Some churches stream then to what's called a stream provider. That basically takes your stream and then just duplicates it on a bunch of sites. So it sends it out to Facebook, Vimeo, YouTube, all at the same time. You don't have to use that. A lot of churches go straight from something like OBS or Wirecast directly to one platform only, like Facebook or YouTube. And then again, we just sit on top of that feed and we capture it in Altar. So people end up joining on the Altar side, and that's where your members actually watch. So that's a high level of both of those. I'll pause here. Did I lose anybody along the way? And do you have any specific questions about the setup part? Then we'll get into the actual platform.
I know, Stephanie, this is Cindy. One question that came in a conversation after this afternoon.
Yes.
We would need to pair something with Altar Live. We wouldn't be able to just use Altar Live to do the video if it was a live video and send it out. We would need Zoom or something else.
It's a great question. So at the moment, you do need to pair something. Because we're a work in progress, I'll peel back the curtains a little bit and say too, we are working on the ability to actually replace how churches use, we're hoping to create, and I don't want to speak too optimistically, it's still in progress, but hoping to create the ability to actually replace how churches do OBS on that end, as well as the entire live stream, so that it can be a complete system end to end. So at the moment, what you would need, we sit on top of how you're already getting your live stream out. But if that is something, if your church is already live streaming, great. This is going to be a really easy addition. If your church is only using Zoom, I'd be happy, we can dig into that deeper with you and figure out what that might look like. The other area I know that, that we can get into as well is what two-way interaction looks like in person. So our team actually started by building software to do that, to design for churches to be able to bring in people from home, show them on screen, have the same slides, go back to people at home, and vice versa. What we realized is that most churches are like 6 months out from doing that, that the in-person interaction isn't quite there yet. And so we've really launched with this platform, which sits on top of a live stream, and then we're working backwards from there. Yeah, it's a great question.
Quick question.
Yeah.
We haven't actually started going back into the building yet, but we are using Wirecast as our video editor switcher. We are uploading to Boxcast, and then we're distributing through there. And that's been working great because our goal really has been nobody left behind.
Yes.
And so if you're not a Facebook fan, fine, you can grab the website on, the feed on the website or on YouTube or what have you. The one person kind of mentioned this at the beginning is our folks in the nursing homes, which a lot of times they don't even have a cell phone or a computer of any kind. And so we started doing something called a sermon by phone, where I'm just uploading the sermon and they can just do a dial in. Is there a phone component to your setup, to Alter? Yeah.
It's a great question. Because we don't originate the video feed currently, you would just continue. We've actually used the Zoom integration for things like that, because Zoom also has that dial up. Since your church is just directly going to the video editing, you would essentially do the same thing. Alter would sit on top of it. So as we think about Alter, is really the ability to dive deeper with members that are engaging online, so that they can not just stream it, but that they can actually talk with there's a peer-to-peer interaction starting to go on.
Gotcha.
So that's really where Alter sits in the equation at the moment, which is, things like watch parties, your ability to pick a seat together, the ability to do breakout rooms afterwards, where people see a room full of tables and they can choose tables to sit at, and they can mix and mingle with each other, leave a table, and they all form video conference sessions. As well as, down the road too, we'll have what we call like virtual classrooms. So the ability to actually have space, like essentially replace the way that you use Zoom. So you have spaces where people can go into online together to have meetings or Sunday school. And you can do those synchronously or asynchronously, depending on, how your church runs their week.
How about multiple simultaneous groups, like that are all separate? We could have multiple versions of this, that we could have Sunday school in one group and a different Sunday school in another group, and
you could
a prayer service all simultaneously. Are there multiple licenses that we would need to do that, or?
Yeah, great question. All right, you're teeing me up.
Oh, so sorry.
Let's jump into it, because this is going to be way more helpful to see. So let me just switch gears here. So what I'm going to do here. So again, we launched on, can you still see my screen?
Yes.
Yep.
Okay. How do I get rid of this?
It's the Vimeo Alter thing.
Yep, great. So we launched on Saturday. So you can imagine our imaginations are going as fast as yours in all the areas that we're going to be building out to. But so in Alter, so this is the platform that people click on when they get into the link. I'll share it with you in just a bit, but I'm going to point out some things first. So yeah, to answer your question, you can have one community account, and in that account, you can have as many synchronous events as you want happening at the same time. Then within those synchronous events, you'll have the ability to actually have sub-sessions going on. So you have Sunday service linked to your webpage. People click on that button to join your Sunday service. They'll see a welcome lobby. They will then, once your service actually goes live, they'll go into here, and then they might get a button or a pop-up that says Sunday school is starting. If you want to go to Sunday school, click here, which they can then leave, and they could jump back into the service as they want to. They could go back and forth between the two. So you have, you could almost imagine too, it's like walking into a lobby where you see, here's the main auditorium, here's the Sunday school classrooms going on. You can pop your head in, you can leave. If you get bored of the service, you can go out to the tables and talk with people, just like we do in real life. So
it needs a little Grubhub button to deliver your coffee. And
yeah, yeah. I haven't gotten that far. But
sorry.
Yeah. So you can essentially host multiple things happening at the same time. Yeah, great question.
Okay.
So we get into Altar Live itself. So we're looking at this screen. So again, yes, you're streaming your, this feed that's happening here is coming from, this one's just on Vimeo. I just plugged in the URL in the event creation. This could be pulled from Facebook, it could be pulled from YouTube, Zoom, and it sits here like a video player. It automatically played when I opened the screen, but I paused it so it wouldn't keep playing. Over on the right-hand side here, you'll see chat, where you can create new conversations with people. You'll see the other members. You can see who's not seated but open to joining, and then who is not seated and not opening to joining. So we'll have what's called the private mode. So for those members who don't necessarily want to get dinged all during the service and they really want to worship privately, or it's just not their thing, they can go, it was a click of a button, just go into private mode, and they can watch at their own leisure, and they can't get notified about things or pulled into a watch party.
Actually, that's pretty important, because there are some folks that don't like to watch on Facebook, because Facebook people are constantly typing things. They're like, I don't want that. I want to just focus on things, so they'll be over on YouTube or something. But
exactly,
that's great. That's great.
Yep. So that same ability. The other thing you'll notice too, and I'm going to share you guys the link because I want you to get into it as well, but I'm just going to point some things out because I know as soon as I share it, you're going to be like, ooh, look at all these buttons. So the other thing too is you'll notice in this that you can click this link, and you don't have to interact with anything. You're not required to log in or sign up just to be able to watch the service. So for those of your members who are more technically challenged or it's just not their thing, they can sit and watch the service like they would on YouTube or Facebook and then leave, and they wouldn't have had to click on a single button. We only ask for login or sign up once you choose to interact with features that require video conference. So this is the balance that churches are always trying to strike between accessibility and security. Because you want things to be accessible to anybody who wants to join, but you also you don't want just anybody to have free reign over that one-on-one access with members. So to be able to participate in certain things, like to be able to direct message a single member, or to join a watch party, or to participate in any of the video conference classrooms or breakout tables, all you have to do is give a name and an email address. We're able to authenticate that email then to make sure it's a real person. And it gives you the ability then, if you needed to ever kick somebody out of an event, you can do that quite easily then. It also then gives you access to people who are interested in signing up or becoming a part of your community. They move from an anonymous state to somebody who's actually more known to you. Once somebody creates a sign up, they never have to sign in again. They're just automatically signed in, and they can participate in anything. So we have so a few other things. You see conversations, chat, announcements. This is where announcements go. We'll eventually have on here as well polls, Q&A, things that might have taken advantage of in Zoom. So lastly, let's say the service is run, the service is ended. I want to actually move everyone to the lobby. So I do this, and nobody has had to change a link, and they move into the lobby mode. So I only have one table here right now, but this room can be filled with tables. And these tables are now where people can click on any of these to mix and mingle. So if I clicked on a table, I go into a video breakout room. I could invite other people to come join with me. So I could click on I don't have anybody to invite. right now, but I could click on any of these. I can leave to go find someone on screen. If I want to search somebody in this list, I can find where they're seated, and I can sit down at a table with them. You can lock and unlock tables. So if you want to have a private conversation with somebody, you simply just lock the table. Nobody else can join. Or if you want to leave it open for people to be able to come drop in and say hi, you're able to do that too. So this is what we call your lobby space. Then as we'll have classrooms and other things like that, you'll actually be able to create breakout subgroups even from there, where somebody can go to hear about volunteer opportunities or a prayer room or, a welcome table, things of that nature, Sunday school, things like that. Any questions about this lobby view?
One quick, in terms of privacy, is it so one thing we were thinking about in breakout rooms was having that space for one-on-one prayer, right? I could see how like you said, you could lock down a table, which would be great for that. Is there a way though, without it being visually represented, for two people to
be in prayer together?
Yeah.
That's a great question. So, this is a great example of how we build with church partners. That's a great feature, actually, to be able to have a designated prayer room where you can't actually see who's in the room. You can only see if it's open or if there's availability or not availability. So you could go into the room, you allow one other person or two other people, and then you can lock it and then unlock it, but you don't necessarily see that there's who is specifically in that room. Yeah, that's interesting. I not hard to do at all. Yeah.
Cool.
Yeah.
I don't want to take away. I apologize. I do have to leave early, but thank you very much. This is really great content. I'm looking forward to the recording. Thank you.
Yes, you're welcome. Great. Any other questions about this platform or things that you're seeing so far? Otherwise, what I'm going to do is this. I'm actually going to share this link with you. So you're gonna get into this platform yourself.
And Eleanor, to your question about communion, you would continue to do it the same way you're doing it now, although you could have the possibility, I guess, of inviting people to sit at table, use that lobby space to sit at table and share communion with one another in that space, and then invite people back into the sanctuary space. So it could create an interesting opportunity for people to share more intimately a time of communion together.
Yeah. Or watch parties, that we don't have them developed right now to be able to show you, but you saw it in the video. The ability to sit, choose people to sit with. You have a seat selector where I can join the event and I can see who else is here today, who's seating with who. You can have up to 4 people in a watch party together where we join, and we can talk amongst ourselves while the service is going on. So when it does get to reflection questions or communion, you can literally turn to your video neighbor and discuss or talk openly and freely. Or take communion. So that's a great example. All right, so everyone, I put the link to this event in the chat. Feel free to click on that to join, and you can start clicking around. You're joining as an anonymous user, so you can see at the very high level of somebody who's never created an account, never been on the platform before, what it's like to just join and watch a service or event. So feel free to click around. You'll notice if you do try to chat, that it will ask you to sign up. You're welcome to. It'll just ask for your name and email, which it'll send you an email just to confirm. If you click confirm, it'll take you back into the system to access some more of those features. And I see Sue had to leave us. Great, and so feel free to start clicking around and looking at things as we go. So, and then the last thing we'll do after you guys take a look around this is I'll show you, just go backwards to how we actually create events and just see a little bit behind what that looks like. Any questions as you're looking at this side of things? I know we talked about the tables, now the live stream part of it.
One of the things that you haven't touched on yet is how you do the pricing.
Oh, yes. Yeah, members. That's a great question. So while you guys are playing around, I can talk through that. So we are a monthly subscription because your attendance changes month by month. Rather than trying to pay out for a year, we've really based it around, the way that churches, handle things. So we tier our accounts by average church size. So 70, 150, 300, 500, 1,000. I'm assuming most of your churches are going to be either under 70 or under 150. So you'd be in those two ranges. So members in your altar community are different than members in your church, in that members in your altar community are people who have given a name and an email address. So they have an account. They're logged in, they chat, they participate in breakout rooms, they have, you can give people admin permission, you can give people greeter, hospitality permissions, things like that, or they're just a general member. Let's say you have 60 members, 60 people log into an event who have an account in your community, and then you have another 20 people join, and you're on the 70 member plan. So now you're 10 members over what your plan is. So nothing happens to those members if they sign up during your event. They can sign up at any time. There's no barrier to entry there. After the event ends, your community admin would get a notice that said you went over your member limit. Please decide what you want to do. At that stage, you can decide as the community admin, do I want to accept all these new signups? If so, then I'll move it. I'll upgrade my plan to the next tier. Or do I want to decline them? Or do I want to deactivate some other accounts to make room for them? So you can choose. You won't get billed until you decide what you want to do. After, you might have members that only sign up once. So they come to a service, they signed in to use chat or something like that. And that, you've never seen them again, or they only come once every 3 months. Our system will automatically notify you after a certain time period when we see a member has not been active. So we'll let you know this member it has been inactive. We're going to move them off of your bill. So they're not considered an active member. You're not paying for them, but we're not deactivating their account. So if that member was ever to log in again, they would have no problem logging in. They wouldn't know the difference. But for you, you don't have to pay for these members that are just sitting there that have not participated in your event. So in that way, we also, if your attendance fluctuates on a month-to-month basis, we really look at the average of that and how to maximize for you within that monthly plan. Yeah, any other questions though, I'm happy to answer about. We haven't actually looked at pricing, but any other questions about that? Or about the platform as you guys click around? If not, the next thing I just want to show you very briefly is on the back end. So how you actually create an event. So this is your community page. It's going to look a little different probably by the time some of you might get into this platform. But we're going to actually show you what it's like to create an event. So anytime you create an event, you can create an event that's a standing event. So let's say you create a single, it's almost like linking a room to a link. So you have a embedded link on your website that says, join us for worship online. That link, you can either choose to switch out every single week, like you create a new event for that link, or you leave the same event linked to it and you just change the details of that event. So you just switch out the live stream or you change the hospitality team or things like that. So you can decide what you want to do. So you give it a name, a description, you choose what time and date it's gonna run at. You can add hospitality team here. So I can add Cindy to my hospitality team. Jeff, these are some of our attendees from last time. You can make somebody a host, which gives them the ability to start and end to the event. Any of these greeters can message with both, anonymous users as well as logged in members. And you can send an automated greeting message. Welcome to worship. That everybody gets when they join. Then you can select viewing permissions. So this is the benefit of having actual accounts in your community. If you set your event to anyone, this means it's a public event. Anyone can click on this link and join. But maybe you have a church budget meeting and you don't want everyone to be able to join. So you select all members or selected members, and somebody has to actually log in to be a part of that event. Very much like Zoom has, by invite only. Lastly, second to last, we connect your live stream feed. So again, like I said, you can connect from Facebook, YouTube, Vimeo. We also do embed code if any of you are familiar with that. If you've ever embedded a live stream onto a website. So I've just copied and pasted here my Vimeo link, as you saw in there, and I've uploaded an image that acts as a thumbnail when I share the event via text or something like that. Then you can add pre-event slides. So again, if you have a link connected, and somebody clicks on that link before the service starts. Right now, if you have a Zoom link clicked, it has this pop-up that appears that says, the host has not started this meeting. Please join back in 2 days, something like that. This is similar, but a little bit more aesthetically pleasing. So if you clicked on a link before the event actually started, you could set slides to be rotating so people see this, they see the countdown timer, but they'll also see announcement slides or maybe opportunities in the church or other things that you want to put on here, and you can set them on a timer. And then lastly, you can control your lobby. This is what we're really building out still, but like right now I only selected 4 seats per table, but you can select more than that as you need to. And that's it. So that's the event creation process. It's really simple. You can give anybody in your community admin access to be a part of it, and to go from there.
Stephanie, can I ask a question?
Yeah.
When you were doing the demo before about the tables, like after the service or whatever, and you were talking about so people could join or you could lock a table. So I just saw there that you could set tables as 2, 3, or 4 people. Can people keep coming until such time as you lock it, or is it when you hit a table of 4, that's it? Nobody more can join, whether you lock it or not.
At the moment, it's up to 4. You said ahead of time how many chairs, literally like chairs you want at a table. But you can, we'll eventually have the ability to go more than 4. But right now, if it's 4, then the table gets listed as full, and you have to wait till somebody leaves that table. So you can, locking it, you can lock at any time or unlock.
So we need the virtual equivalent of people bringing chairs from the other nearby tables to keep joining in.
Exactly. Yeah. Yes. Which, one of the things we've intentionally designed around is the ability to have more intimate groups together. You'll notice even like groups like ours on Zoom right now, we're a large group. And once you get over really 5 or 6 people, it doesn't, you more listen to other people talk than you do have side conversations. But
that's what some people want to do.
Yes, and some people do want to do that. They want to just be able to listen and be a fly on the wall, so to say. So things like that is where we'll have bigger rooms where you can have bigger groups of people gathered together than just those smaller groups. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so to build on that, so suppose there are 4 people, and so the table's full, and they realize they're having a conversation that more people
want to be a part
in the lobby want to be a part of. Could they then launch, a small group room at that point and say, hey, we're going to talk some more about the sermon. If you want to come chat about it, join us in the room.
Great question. We can grow we've started on the smaller end to grow slowly, but it'll probably be up to 10 people at a table is what we'll be able to do for like a table setting. And then we'll have you could say, all right, let's all go to classroom 1 to continue this conversation so that we could have more people, or you could have a facilitated, somebody sharing their screen or something like that, where it's a bit more facilitated. Yeah. Cool. It's a good question. Yeah. Any other questions or features that you guys are curious about or interested in, or that you wish existed? Or ways you could see your community engaging with this, or ways not.
And this is a thing to highlight for those of us who are here on the presbytery side, that there's this group discount.
Yes.
So, there's this possibility of Presbytery of Northern New England or Presbytery of Boston having an Ultra Live account, using that for presbytery meetings, for our own gatherings, and learning events, resource days. And then if 5 or more of our congregations also sign up, then that creates this possibility for a group discount.
Yep. Yeah, that's a great. So we do that. So we have, for most of your communities that are probably under the at 70 or under 70. So we have a free plan, which is essentially more of the video player side of things. It has less of the engagement side of things. All of that really comes into play when we have actual members, because again, members have to have an account to actually, for us to be able to keep security for, that interactivity. So that's where you're looking at. It's essentially $1 per user per month. So a good way to think about it as well is like you're probably spending that on when you did coffee hour and tea, after a service, you're probably looking at something very similar to that. So that platform, so like Cindy said, you can have, if you as a group of churches or sign up together, we do apply discounts across a group. So that group can, they can each have their own account based on the size that they need of members, but then we have an overall discount. So it's more affordable for the smaller churches, and it's within reason for a larger church that might have more resources to be able to do that. It's also something if your church is really small and you're like, I don't know that we would necessarily want to manage this all ourselves. If it's something you want to share with another church to be able to utilize as a tool, very much like churches share, you probably don't share one individual Zoom license, but other resources that you share together. It could be something like that as well. Great question though. Super. Anything else I can answer for you guys? That is our system end to end as of to date. Again, we launched Saturday, so we are rapidly developing. So I would really encourage you, if you have interest, if this seems like the kind of thing you'd like your church to know more about, or to really start dreaming with us of what it could look like for your community, head to our website, which is just alterlive.com. We have a little messenger icon in the bottom. You're welcome to chat with us there. We really try to cater individually to each church, knowing your needs and what you're looking for, and we can talk through what that individual setup. I'll also put my email. It's just Stephanie@alterlive in the channel here. You're welcome to email me there as well.
And just to let people know, Bruce Reyes-Chow mentioned Alter Live when we had our webinar with him in October. And I reached out, and I think within an hour, I had a response very quickly. Stephanie and Andy set up a Zoom to talk with me about this possibility. They were willing to do 2 of these because we wanted to provide that accessibility for people who have jobs that don't allow them to come to a daytime meeting. And all the way through this, I have found them to be both accessible and attentive. And even just today, so what Stephanie went through with the presentation this evening was tweaked a little bit, I think probably based on the questions earlier today. So there is a level of engagement and attention. That doesn't mean that Alter Live is an answer for what your church may be looking for. But what I've experienced is that Stephanie and her team will be an honest conversation partner with you, and a happy conversation partner with you about what might be possible.
Yeah. Oh, thank you, Cindy. That's very kind. Well, we really do, and we don't think that Alter Live is a one size fits all for every church. There's, and there's lots of steps in between. As I said at the top, step 1 is really understanding how does your community want to engage with each other? What's going to work for them? Especially communities that have elderly. I know we did not hardly touch on that today, but I'd be happy to get into a more one-on-one. The areas I see, and I'll be, very honest with you guys as well. We are learning as you guys are learning as well as we're building technology, because we do see groups of people that are getting, that have not usually been designed for. So there's some exciting things happening in this space. I very much see our company growing in that area of thinking about how do you easily get church on TV for people who are older? How do you easily make production easy? How do you make call-in easy? How do you make workshops and everyday meetings in life and Sunday school? How do you do design for kids? I have some meetings later this week with churches that we're going to the drawing board of, okay, let's rethink about Sunday school. What does it mean to engage children online who are, this is not the ideal learning setting for them, but what could we do to be creative in that way? Go ahead.
So on the other hand, online is not the ideal learning setting for kids, but by June of next year, it's going to be the learning setting that kids have been familiar with for over a year now.
It's true.
And there may be some ideas to steal from your local schools by that point too.
It's so true. I mean, the world is reacting to this and trying to build in response to what we are learning as a grand scale experiment of throwing all humans online all at the same time.
Right.
How do we react? How do we learn? How do we engage? How do we have community? One of the things I'm most excited about is the opportunity for churches to lead the way in this, is to think, and I've been amazed at the creativity of churches over the last, 6 to 8 months of how we have, rallied around our community members, and we are thinking thoughtfully in these directions. And I think there is, I think what's so cool about spaces like this is, Zoom is never going to design for churches, but we can take some of the best that we've learned from all of these platforms and really think about faith communities and at that community engagement level of what does it mean to actually not just do church together, but be the church together online, and to be present with people, and to find the areas where people can really feel met, seen and heard in an online space. And we're really striving to build technology that does that well. Any other? Yeah, thank you guys. I'm happy to answer.
This is a goodbye wave. So I'm sitting here thinking about so we're in the worship service, we're having our online dive, and so what makes this different and better is that I, as someone watching, can interact with someone else in my pew while the service is going on, make nasty comments or whatever it is I want to do. And I guess one of the things, which is great because that's kind of a private side thing. If you touch this and my brain froze, but a larger, we Presbyterians are real big on liturgy and congregational singing.
Yes.
And that's really hard to do online because of all the lag.
Mm-hmm.
What have you thought about larger group participation?
Yeah. It's a great question. We actually just had Andy's probably like, oh yeah, we just had meetings about this today. We are certainly, first of all, there's the reality of physics that light moves faster than sound. Am I right? Sound moves faster than
Yes,
light.
that is correct.
Yes.
I'm a pastor and I know that.
Yes, but we are fighting against some of the realities of nature, which is that lag time is a part of this, equation that we have, as well as, where internet towers are and things like that. So anyways, all that to say, until everyone has VR headsets at home, there is these things that we have to work around still. But that being said, there are some really creative, ways we're starting to think about the two-way interaction and getting that community congregation feel of being able to share organically or to sing in ways that you can feel like you're a part of it together, the call and response back and forth. So like I mentioned, Altar Live right now is sitting on top of your live stream player. Where we're going to be designing backwards to is the ability to actually do the two-way interaction within the same platform, so that you could, people could click a button to share a prayer request organically during a time of prayer, and you can do popcorn prayer or things of that nature. I don't want to promise anything too far because it's still a world that
we're recording this.
Yeah,
Sorry.
but it's certainly something.
As an early adopter, will we get a future discount when all of the other
all of our ideas get implemented?
Hey, I'm all about looking to save the money too. So
I love it. Well, Denise, you should. Yes, I mean, we're very much, early adopters that are on this platform. We're going to get to influence this platform. We were with church partners, and we've seen a great growth in the UK. Actually, about half our churches are out of the UK right now. In part because the UK has been, churches in the UK have passed their prime like 30 years ago. And so they've experienced what it's been like to be on the verge of church death, that online was like a lifeboat for them. They were like, oh my gosh, this whole world opened up. And in some ways they're doing some really radical things that I think are really admirable and creative, that we've learned a lot from as we've designed around them as well. So it's there, the world is really coming together on this, on how we experience church online. Yeah, anybody else got a great feature that they could imagine or wish existed? I know the elderly, including people who are not technically, maybe don't even have a smartphone or device. That is a big one.
That's a huge one for us. We're sub 50 members, and I'm one of the youngsters, and I got kids in high school. And I mean, on the one hand, I guess the youngsters, we're a quarter of the population of the church, but that's all 12 of us. So, and yeah, tonight we had a stewardship meeting tonight on a conference phone call, because one of the 3 members of the committee really isn't able to handle getting online for that. Now, on the other hand, our session meeting is done on Skype. We started that in March, and we like it enough that we're not totally sure if we're going to maybe alternate together meetings and Skype meetings once the COVID thing is over, because it's actually really handy to finish up supper, pop on Skype, do the meeting, and not have to all drive to the one central spot and sit. And we like being together, but we have found some appreciation that. And some of our small groups in the congregation are starting to use Skype for that now too. We've danced around small groups meeting in person. There's been 1 or 2 that do, but the one's been mostly getting away with doing it outside in the parking lot, and that's coming to an end about this time of year.
Yeah.
In New Hampshire, at least.
Getting cold. Yep.
Yeah, it's a great, and I think there's a lot of, there's a big move to think about TV and casting. I mean, think about how long it's taken people like Netflix and like Comcast to figure out how to make technology accessible for an older population.
This is a struggle for me right now with adapting this congregation, because I come from a big church background.
Right.
I grew up Lutheran in the Midwest. Was confirmed into a church with about 5,000 members in Iowa. When my wife and I got married, we were at another big church in Cedar Rapids, Iowa. And then as jobs have bounced around the country, I keep moving to smaller and smaller churches. To, a 1,500 person Lutheran church in Georgia, which was huge for a Lutheran church in Georgia, to moving up to New England and working for GE for a while in Boston, and at a little Lutheran church in Andover that was excited that they had like 300 to 400 members. And then now up here in New Hampshire, working for another company up here and finding a Presbyterian church just through friends. And we're 50 members. And so my brain, as you might have noticed, I'm a musician. It kind of shows in my office. I've gone from playing at worship service with 1,000 people at them to being part of a band where the band is a quarter of the congregation. So part of my brain is looking at this going, maybe we just need to kind of expand this church and just, we still have local members, but part of me is already thinking about, what about a virtual church?
I got to tell you, we are, technically we've got 400 people on the rolls. And when we were in church, we were lucky. We had a good Sunday. We had 200 people there. Since we have gone virtual, We are averaging 400 to 500 people a Sunday
Mhm.
that are tuning in and joining, and they're not all in Northern Kentucky. I can tell you that they're all over the country, and
Right.
some in Canada and other places that I don't even know how they all found us, but they
Mhm.
found us, and they're part of our community now. And we don't want to lose those people.
Yeah.
Exactly, exactly. I want to make sure we
Peter,
get
you're
to,
sort of an outlier there. We've heard that most churches, they did have that nice spike, and even if some of them were just 3-second views in the beginning,
Mhm.
but that those numbers have returned to earth, and maybe even going a little subterranean in some places. So the fact that you've maintained that almost double the growth, double the size is really something. And yeah, it is. You have a new dynamic now when you go back in the building. Who's part of the church and who isn't?
Mhm.
That's the tough thing is COVID spiking. We technically have not had an indoor service since March
Yeah.
of any kind. We flirted with 4 o'clock Sunday afternoon open air prayer. I think we called it. Where just 30 people showed up on the lawn, and we put a mic and a speaker out. But yeah, we
Been a little
really
cold for
haven't.
that.
Now it is, yeah, for sure. We've stopped doing that.
Mhm.
And originally we were planning to go back in November, and then everything blew up, and so we're still like, well, online.
Yeah.
so I want to make sure we get to Denise's question. Sorry,
Sure.
and
No, go ahead.
in the chat. Yeah,
Mm.
can you share with us some of the churches that are using Altar that people could go and visit and see what it's like as a visitor?
It's a great question. We just launched Saturday, so I can't point to any churches that I don't think any of them were ambitious enough to do their Sunday service on us. But as they start rolling out, I certainly could do that. If you leave your information on head to our website and leave your information there, or send me an email, I'd be happy to send that out to you once we do have churches starting on the platform.
That might be something to feature on your website if you have churches who are willing to kind of publicly say, hey, we're using Altar, come check out what we're doing with it.
We would love to do that. And I am sure there are many that would be very happy to do that as well.
I mean, it's free advertising for a church. Churches like that.
It's so true.
So we
Yeah.
really wanted to keep this to an hour and a half because time is, time is time. So please do reach out through the Altar Live website, through Stephanie's email, because as I've already found and as you've seen tonight, they are more than interested in engaging the questions and being prodded in some new directions. So I can say 100% they'd love to keep these conversations going.
Yes, certainly. And if you've heard things tonight that you're like, we're curious, we would want this to work, but I just can't make the mental bridge yet of how this would fit within our community. I would love to talk with you and just, break it down with your community too and get creative. And if it isn't Altar Live, point you in some right directions as well as you think about those steps to what does it mean to build engagement online. I think what's going to be exciting, keep your eye out on Altar Live as we grow to, our tasks for January is really starting to think about the actual true hybrid, which is when people start gathering in person as well, and what that's going to look like too. We're a bit ways from that still, but we have our eye on it.
That's awesome.
Thank you, Stephanie.
Thank you,
again
Stephanie.
so
Everyone.
much.
Yep.
Thank
This
you.
recording will be available tomorrow. The recording from this afternoon is already up on both websites under our resources, COVID-19, resources for worship box. Yay. So
Thanks, everyone.
again, thank
Yeah,
you so
thank you.
much.
Thank you.
Bye
And
now.
Appreciate it.
yeah,
Yeah.
drawing the
Good
circle
night.
wider.
Thanks,
now.
guys.
Have a
Mhm.
good night.
All
Take
right.
care.
Talk to you soon.